The storm had not stopped for 3 days. Wind howled across the white world, dragging sheets of ice through the air like flying knives. The mountains groaned under the pressure of the cold. Even the strongest creatures hid deep in caves, waiting for the storm to pass. Varkos, the alpha of the frost beast clans, pushed through the storm with tired steps. His fur was covered in snow, and his breath came out as clouds of fog. He had been away hunting when the sky turned wild. Now he rushed back to his den, worried for his 2 cubs. They were still very young and could not survive strong storms without him. When he reached the edge of his territory, he froze. His den smelled wrong. Too warm. Too alive. Something unfamiliar had entered. His instincts sharpened. He lowered his body and stepped quietly toward the entrance. The ice around the doorway glowed faintly, which was strange. The den should have been dark and cold. Varkos stepped inside and prepared himself for danger. The sight waiting for him made him stop completely. His sharp eyes widened, and for a moment he forgot the cold outside. There was a human inside his den. Varkos had seen humans before, though rarely. They were fragile, strange creatures that walked across the ice in thick suits, exploring and measuring things for reasons frost beasts never understood. Humans avoided frost beasts and frost beasts ignored humans. That was the way things had always been. But here, inside the deepest part of Varkos's own den, sat a young human woman. Her face was pale from cold and her hands shook, but her eyes were bright and alert. She sat beside a small heat lamp made from broken metal pieces. Around her lay Varkos's 2 cubs. The cubs were wrapped in layers of warm cloth. The smaller cub was pressed against the human's chest, and she held him close, rubbing his tiny back to keep him warm. The other cub lay across her lap, eyes half open and breathing weakly. Varkos growled softly, and the human looked up quickly. She did not scream. She did not run. She tightened her hold on the small cub, protecting him with her thin arms. Varkos took a step forward. The den shook under his weight. The human swallowed but did not move away. She only spoke in a soft, tired voice. "I'm not hurting them," she said. "I'm trying to save them." Her name was Erin, though Varkos did not know it yet. She had crashed in the storm 2 days earlier. Her small research ship had been torn apart by the winds. She survived by crawling into a crack between ice cliffs. On her way through the storm, she had heard weak cries coming from this den. She found the cubs trapped under a fallen sheet of ice. One was already freezing. The other could barely move. She had lifted the ice with all her strength and brought them into the den to shield them from the storm. She knew she might not survive long, but she could not leave the crying cubs behind. Varkos did not know Erin's story, but he could see the truth with his own eyes. The cubs trusted her. They clung to her for warmth. The small one weakly lifted its head and made a soft sound when Varkos entered, as if trying to show him the human who saved them. The alpha's heart, frozen by instinct and pride, felt something strange. Confusion. Doubt. Respect. He lowered his head to inspect the cubs. Erin stiffened but stayed still. Varkos sniffed the cloth and the warm lamp. He felt the heat coming from the human's body. "You kept them alive," he said deeply. His voice rumbled through the ice. Erin did not understand his words, but she understood the tone. It sounded less threatening. She nodded slowly. "They were freezing. I just did what I could." The storm shook the den again. Snow fell from the roof in small clumps. The cub on her lap whimpered. Erin held them tighter. "You should take them," she whispered. "They need you." "I'm only keeping them warm for now." Varkos stepped back and studied her. The human looked exhausted. Her lips were blue. Her hands trembled. She must have been out in the storm far too long. She had barely any food left. She was freezing, weak, and alone, yet she had used her strength to help the cubs first. This confused Varkos more than anything. Humans were supposed to run from frost beasts, not help their young. They were supposed to care only about their own kind, not risk death for strangers. But this woman had done exactly that. The cub in her arms made a small cry, and she whispered gently to him, stroking his fur. "It's okay," she said softly. "Your father's here now." Varkos felt a strange warmth move through his chest. His instincts still whispered warning, but something deeper whispered trust. He stepped closer and lowered his giant head until he was only inches away from Erin. His breath was warm on her face. Her eyes widened, but she did not pull back. She only asked one question. "Please, don't hurt me." Varkos blinked slowly. He could feel her fear. But he could also feel her honesty. She did not enter the den with bad intentions. She did not touch his cubs to steal or harm. She touched them to save. He pulled back slightly and let out a low, thoughtful rumble. Aaron finally exhaled with relief. The storm roared louder outside. A harsh wind pushed against the entrance and ice cracked along the walls. The den would not stay warm forever. Varkos moved toward the cubs and gently touched each of them with his nose, checking their strength. They were weak but alive because of this strange human. Aaron leaned back against the wall, shaking from cold. Varkos noticed her shiver. She had given all her warmth to the cubs and kept none for herself. She whispered, I didn't know if you'd come back in time. Varkos stared at her for a long moment. Then he lay down across the entrance of the den, blocking the wind with his massive body. Warm air filled the space again. Aaron looked surprised, then grateful. She hugged the cubs gently and smiled a small, tired smile. Outside, the storm screamed. Inside the den, an unexpected silence formed, not fear, not anger, but something new. A human had saved the Alpha's cubs. And Varkos, the strongest of the frost beasts, no longer saw her as an intruder. He saw her as the reason his family still breathed, a reason he would not forget. The storm finally weakened by morning, leaving only quiet snow drifting across the ice. Inside the den, the air felt warmer than before, but tension still filled the space. Varkos watched the human closely, unsure what to make of her. His cubs slept on her lap, pressed tightly against her for heat. Their small breaths rose and fell in a soft rhythm. Aaron woke slowly. Her body was stiff and her fingers felt numb. When she opened her eyes and saw the giant frost beast staring at her, she froze for a moment. But then she remembered the night. His arrival, his choice not to harm her, his silent acceptance. She whispered, "Good morning?" I think. Varkos did not understand her words, but he understood her tone. She was calm. She was not trying to run, fight, or hide. She only pulled the cubs closer, making sure they were safe. Varkos stepped forward. His large shadow covered her for a moment. Aaron felt a small spike of fear, but she did not move away. She waited, letting him approach. Varkos lowered his head and sniffed her carefully, then sniffed the cubs, checking their warmth. Aaron said softly, "They're feeling better. Still weak, but better." Her hands gently rubbed the smallest cub's back. Varkos watched the way she touched them, with care, with patience, with something he did not expect from a human. He had always believed humans were selfish creatures who cared for their own comfort first. But this woman had nearly frozen to death trying to save two young creatures that were not her own. Varkos settled near her, keeping the cold air away from the den. Aaron allowed herself a moment to relax. She leaned back against the icy wall and breathed slowly. She was exhausted, but she finally felt safe enough to rest. After some time, the larger cub woke and looked up at Varkos. He made a soft sound and reached out with his small paw. Varkos responded with a gentle nudge, and the cub let out a quiet squeak of joy. Aaron smiled at the small moment between father and child. She whispered, "They missed you." Varkos did not understand, but he sensed her kindness. He also sensed something else, the faint scent of hunger on the human. She had gone a long time without food. Her stomach had been growling for hours. But she had ignored her own needs to help the cubs. Varkos left the entrance and disappeared into a side tunnel. Aaron watched him nervously, unsure if he had gone to get something or simply left her alone. After a few minutes, he returned with a small frozen fruit in his mouth. It was a rare plant that grew under the snow, a food frost beasts only ate when hunting was scarce. He placed it gently beside her. Aaron stared at it, surprised. Is that for me?" Varkos pushed it closer with his nose. She picked it up and took a careful bite. Tasted sweet, cold, and refreshing. She closed her eyes in relief. "Thank you," she whispered. Varkos watched her eat, then sat beside her again. His instincts told him he should be cautious, but another instinct, an older, deeper one, told him he needed to protect the one who protected his cubs. The instinct of a leader. The instinct of a parent. Aaron finished eating slowly, saving a small piece for later. Then she looked at the cubs again. The smaller cub's breathing was still weak. Aaron placed her hand on his chest, feeling the shallow rise and fall. "This one needs more warmth," she said quietly. "He's still fighting." Varkos heard the soft worry in her voice. He moved closer and exhaled warm air onto the cub. Aaron gently shifted the cub so he rested between them, human warmth on one side, frost beast warmth on the other. Hours passed. The storm outside faded into silence. The world felt still and frozen, but inside the den, there was a strange peace. Then something changed. A distant howl echoed across the mountains. Varkos stood immediately. His fur rose. His ears pointed toward the entrance. Aaron felt the sudden tension and held the cubs tightly. "What is it?" she whispered. Varkos growled low, a warning sound. The howl came again, closer this time. Aaron could hear it clearly now, a deep, hungry call. It did not sound like Varkos. It did not sound friendly. Another frost beast. A rival. Aaron's heartbeat quickened. She looked at the cubs and then at Varkos. "Is something coming? Are we in danger?" Varkos walked to the entrance and sniffed the air. He knew the scent. A lone male, strong and desperate from the storm. Such beasts searched for any weakness in another's den. They sometimes stole cubs left alone. Aaron stepped back and pressed the cubs against her chest. Her arms shook, but she refused to let go. Varkos turned to her. His eyes said everything. "Stay behind me." He positioned himself between her and the entrance. The rival's shadow appeared in the snow outside. The beast growled, challenging the alpha. Aaron felt fear grip her, but she also felt something else, resolve. She picked up a broken piece of metal from her crash. Her hands trembled, but she held it tight. She would not run. She would not abandon the cubs. The rival beast stepped forward. Varkos let out a deep roar that shook the walls. The intruder hesitated, but hunger drove him closer. Aaron whispered to the cubs, "Stay quiet. Stay safe." The rival lunged toward the entrance. Varkos moved first. He slammed his body against the intruder, blocking the way completely. Snow flew into the air. Aaron held the cubs close, shielding them with her body. The growls outside grew louder, but she trusted Varkos. She trusted his strength, his instinct, and his will to protect. After a long struggle, the rival beast finally backed away. His howls faded as he retreated into the snow. Varkos returned to the den, breathing heavily but unhurt. Aaron exhaled in relief. "You protected us," she said softly. Varkos looked at her, then at the cubs. His instinct had changed. This human was no threat. She was part of the safety of the den. Aaron gently stood and stepped closer. She raised her hand slowly. Varkos lowered his head. Her hand touched his fur for the first time, softly, carefully, with gratitude and trust. In that simple moment, two worlds that were never meant to meet found a fragile connection. A human with a gentle heart. An alpha with a fierce instinct. And two tiny cubs who needed them both. The storm grew louder as night covered the frozen valley, but Roland could hear something else beneath the wind. The alpha had lived through many winters, many battles, and many hunts. He knew the sound of danger when it breathed. Something was moving outside the den. Something large. Something that did not belong to the ice fields. Inside the den, Milo placed more heat stones near the cubs. Their small bodies shivered under their fur, but they were stronger now than when he had first found them. Milo checked their paws and wrapped them in torn pieces from his emergency coat. He did everything with a soft, careful touch. He knew he was being watched. Roland stood near the entrance, his huge form blocking the wind. His eyes glowed gold in the darkness as he stared at the human. Milo felt the tension. The alpha had not fully accepted him, not yet. Saving the cubs had stopped the killing, but trust was a different battle. Before either of them could speak, a crackling noise echoed outside. Then another. Milo turned quickly. "That's not the storm," he whispered. Roland already knew. He lowered his body, muscles tightening. The sound was too sharp, too controlled. It was technology. It was a machine walking. Roland growled. "Hunters." Milo felt a coldness deeper than the ice. "They followed me." The alpha turned his head slowly. "Explain." Milo took a breath, shaken by guilt. "I was part of a survey team. We landed here to scan for life and resources. But the others, they didn't see your kind as living beings. They reported your species as a threat. That brings the hunter units." Roland's claws dug into the frozen ground. Now everything made sense. Humans and his kind had clashed before long ago. But he had hoped this human was different. Now he feared the danger had arrived because of him. "How many?" Roland asked. 3 units, Milo said. "Walking drones. Armored. They track heat and movement." Roland growled deep in his throat. "They want my cubs." "No," Milo said quickly. "They want everything alive. They wipe out the land so colonizers don't face danger." Roland bared his teeth at the idea. He had fought predators and rival alphas, but machines were different. Machines did not listen. Machines did not feel fear. Machines never stopped. Another metallic footstep echoed outside the den. This time it was closer. Milo grabbed his pack and pulled out a blinking device. He smashed it against the wall. Roland flinched. "What was that?" "A tracker," Milo said. They use it to follow my location. I didn't know it was still on until now. Rollin stared at him. For the first time he saw fear, not the loud kind that made creatures scream, but the silent kind that lived behind the eyes. Milo did not want to die. But he also did not want the cubs to die. The cubs whimpered softly. Milo ran to them, holding them close. Rollin moved toward the entrance. "Stay behind me." There was no anger in his voice now. Only command. The wind screamed as the first hunter unit appeared. Its metal frame glowed with cold light, its sensors scanning the snow. When it detected the den opening, its arms shifted into weapon shapes. Milo ducked lower, covering the cubs. Rollin stepped forward, blocking the machine's view. He had no armor. No weapons. Only teeth and strength. The machine fired a warning shot. Ice exploded on the ground. Rollin roared so loud the snow shook. He leaped at the machine, tackling it into the storm. Milo heard metal tear, claws scrape, and the storm swallow the sound. Milo waited, shaking. He wanted to run out. He wanted to help. But he had no weapon and no training to fight machines. Instead, he forced himself to think. He looked around the den. He looked at the cubs. He realized something important. The machines were tracking heat. He looked at the dimming heat stones next to the cubs. He picked them up and wrapped all 3 cubs in his coat so their heat became one small shape instead of many. Another heavy step approached the den. Milo acted fast. He placed the warm stones in the far back of the cave and covered them with his remaining clothes. To a machine it would look like several bodies hiding. The second hunter unit walked in, scanning. Milo held the cubs tightly against his chest and stayed silent. The machine turned toward the false heat signature in the back of the cave. Milo moved, slowly, carefully, staying behind rocks, staying low. He reached the side passage of the den, a narrow crack Rollin had used for hunting. With the cubs in his arms, he slipped through it. The cold air stabbed his face, but he kept moving. A sudden boom shook the snow. Rollin crashed back into view, rolling with the broken body of the first machine. Sparks flew as he ripped out wires with his teeth. The hunter unit fell silent. But then the third machine appeared on the ridge above. Before it could fire, it detected a scent. Milo. Not his heat signature. Not his tracker. His breath. The machine turned sharply toward the side of the den. Rollin followed its gaze and saw Milo running with the cubs. For a moment, time froze. Milo was trying to save the cubs. He was trying to save all of them. Rollin felt something shift inside him, something old and deep. For the first time, he did not see a human as an enemy. He saw him as part of his pack. The third machine charged toward Milo. Milo slipped on the ice but kept running, shielding the cubs from the wind. Rollin roared and threw himself at the machine with everything he had left. Metal and fur collided. The machine fired blindly as Rollin clawed at its sensors. Milo reached a frozen ridge and hid behind it. He set the cubs down gently and whispered, "Stay here. Stay quiet." He turned back. Rollin was weakening. The machine was too strong. Milo looked at the broken first unit lying in the snow. He saw something, a power core glowing hot. He ran to it. With trembling hands he pulled out the core. The heat burned him, but he kept going. He ran straight toward the third machine. Rollin saw Milo charging. The machine scanned him and aimed its weapon. Milo shouted, "Rollin, now!" Rollin grabbed the machine's leg and pulled it down. Milo slammed the power core into its open joint. The explosion was small but powerful enough to disable the machine. Snow fell. Silence returned. Rollin breathed heavily. Milo collapsed beside him. The cubs cried until Milo returned and lifted them. Rollin watched the human hold his children close. The storm eased and a strange calm filled the frozen world. Something new had started between them, something neither of their species had ever known before. The storm had calmed by morning, but the sky was still heavy with gray clouds. Rollin stood on a high ridge, his breath forming white mist, his eyes scanning the horizon for any new danger. The broken machines lay scattered across the frozen land. Their metal bodies looked strange and silent under the thin layer of snow. But Rollin knew machines never came alone. If 3 arrived, more could follow. Inside the den, Milo checked the cubs again. Their fur was fluffier now, their breathing stronger. They tried to stand on shaky legs and toppled over. Milo smiled softly and lifted them closer. "You 3 are fighters," he whispered. "Just like your father." Rollin entered the den then, his footsteps heavy but calm. He watched Milo holding the cubs with a gentle touch that no warrior had ever shown to his kind. The Alpha's golden eyes softened a little. Milo stood up. "Any signs of more units?" "Not yet," Rollin said. "But they will come." Your people do not stop after losing machines. Milo lowered his head. I know. They'll send a bigger group. Maybe a full squad. Rollin walked closer. For the first time he sat beside the human instead of across from him. Then we must be ready. Milo looked surprised. You protected my cubs, Rollin said. You fought beside me. You are no longer alone in this storm. We stand together now. Milo felt something warm inside him, something he had not felt in a long time, belonging. The day passed quietly, but that quietness only made the air feel heavier. By evening Rollin's scouts returned, small creatures of his clan who moved silently through the ice fields. They brought news that made the Alpha growl loudly. Milo listened. What did they see? Rollin answered slowly. A human dropship. Landing in the South Valley. Milo's face turned pale. Dropships were not like small drones. A dropship meant soldiers. Armored ones. With heavy weapons. How much time do we have? Milo asked. Not much, Rollin said. They move fast. Milo wrapped the cubs in his coat again. They were warm but still too young to run far or defend themselves. Rollin saw the worry in his eyes. We will not run. Milo looked up at him. Rollin, they won't just come for your clan. They'll take me too. I know too much. I saw the machines. They won't leave witnesses. Then they underestimate us, Rollin said in a low growl. They think you are weak. They think I am alone. They will learn today. Milo nodded. He stood and looked at the Alpha. If we want to stand for the cubs, we need a plan. Machines and soldiers do not fight like animals. They use formation, heat scans, and communication signals. Rollin tilted his head. Explain. Milo drew shapes in the snow. A den, the ridge, the open valley. Rollin leaned forward, watching closely. They'll come from the valley, Milo said. Humans always take the easiest path. They will scan for heat. So we give them heat in the wrong place. He placed small stones on the snow. Rollin studied them. We make them think the cubs are somewhere else, Milo continued. A fake camp. A fake shelter. When they move toward it, you attack from above. I'll take the cubs through the narrow tunnels to a safe point. Rollin lifted his head. You think I should not fight at your side? Milo shook his head. You must. I'm slow in this cold. You're the only one who can strike fast enough. And I need to guard the cubs. Rollin slowly nodded. You speak like a leader. I'm just trying to keep the cubs alive, Milo said. Night arrived. The stars were hidden behind thick clouds. Milo placed heated stones and pieces of his coat inside an old ice crevice to confuse the scanners. Rollin watched his clever work with respect. Before they separated, Milo rested his hand on Rollin's fur just once. Come back alive. Rollin did not move away. Protect my children. The first sound of engines came soon after, deep, heavy, and steady. A bright light cut through the darkness as the dropship lowered toward the valley. Milo held the cubs tight and whispered, Stay calm. Stay quiet. Rollin climbed the ridge, crouching low. His large body blended with the shadows. His breath was steady. His claws were ready. The dropship landed. The metal doors opened and 6 armored soldiers stepped out, their helmets glowing with scanning lights. They spread out, moving in formation. One soldier pointed at his wrist display. Thermal spikes southeast. Could be life forms. They moved toward the fake heat source. Rollin watched from above. He waited. He counted their steps. He remembered Milo's instructions. Strike when they turn their backs. Never before. Milo crawled through the narrow tunnels with the cubs. He could hear muffled voices above. He kept moving. The cubs stayed quiet, sensing the danger. Outside, the soldiers reached the fake camp. They scanned the heat stones wrapped in Milo's clothes. False reading, one soldier said. Something's interfering with the sensors. That was the moment Rollin was waiting for. He launched himself from the ridge with a powerful roar that shook the ice. He landed on 2 soldiers, knocking them down instantly. The others panicked and fired, but the Alpha moved like a shadow. He hit one soldier with his claws, sending him rolling across the snow. The remaining soldiers regrouped. One shouted, It's the Alpha creature. Capture it alive. Rollin roared louder, dodging blasts of energy. He attacked with fury, but he was still one warrior against many weapons. Milo heard the sounds above. He crawled faster, reaching the exit tunnel behind a thick boulder. He placed the cubs in a small sheltered crack. Stay here, he whispered. I have to help him. The cubs cried softly as he left. Milo climbed the icy slope, hands cold and shaking. He reached the top and saw Rollin surrounded. The Alpha was bleeding but still fighting. The soldiers were preparing a stun net, big enough to trap a creature his size. Milo shouted, "Rollin, drop." Rollin instantly obeyed. Milo threw a flare core at the soldier's feet. It exploded with blinding white light. The soldiers stumbled, confused. Rollin used the moment to strike. He pushed through the weakened formation and disabled the last soldier with a heavy blow. Silence filled the valley. Rollin breathed hard, his fur burned in places, his body hurt. Milo stood beside him, panting but alive. "You fought like fire," Rollin said. "You fought like a whole world," Milo replied. They returned to the cubs together. When the small creatures saw them, they made happy sounds and crawled toward both of them. Rollin and Milo shared a look, something stronger than trust now. They had stood for the cubs. They had stood for each other. And the universe would soon learn what that meant. Snowflakes drifted softly across the valley the next morning, covering the broken machines and fallen weapons under a clean white layer. It looked peaceful, but everyone in the den knew the peace would not last. Milo sat at the entrance with the cubs curled in his lap. They were stronger now, their eyes brighter, their movements full of curiosity. They nibbled at his gloves and tried to climb into his coat. Rollin stepped out of the shadows behind him. His wounds were healing, but his steps were still slow. The battle had taken much from him, yet his eyes held steady strength. "They will come again," Rollin said. "Your people do not stop after one loss." Milo nodded. "Yeah, they'll send more. Maybe a full strike team. Maybe more machines." Rollin watched the cubs resting on Milo's chest, their tiny claws lightly gripping his shirt. "You protected them. You protected me as well." Milo looked embarrassed. "I didn't do anything special." "You stood when others would run," Rollin said. "That is more than special." Milo's eyes lowered. Humans had never said anything like that to him. On Earth, he had been treated as a mistake, a burden. Here, in the frozen wasteland, a giant alpha beast saw him as something valuable, something important. Rollin sat beside him, lowering his large body onto the snow. The quiet morning seemed to stretch forever. Milo finally asked, "What will you do now?" "Stay. Well, fight." Rollin lifted his head. "I have a plan. But it is not only my choice." Milo frowned. "What do you mean?" Rollin pointed his muzzle toward the cubs. "A pack must choose the safest path for the young. A path to new life." Milo looked down at the cubs. They were too small to survive another battle. Too small for a long journey through the storm alone. "What path?" Milo asked. Rollin looked at the distant mountains. "North. There is a hidden valley, warm ground, flowing water, deep caves. My ancestors lived there long ago. No human has found it." Milo blinked. "A safe place?" Rollin nodded. "A true home. A place my cubs can grow without fear of machines or soldiers." Milo breathed out. It sounded almost like hope. "But," Rollin continued, "I cannot reach it alone. The path is long. The storms are harsh. And my wounds still slow me." Milo understood now. "You want me to come with you?" Rollin's eyes softened. "You are part of the pack now. The cubs look to you. And you know how humans think. You know how they hunt." Milo glanced at the cubs again. They stared back at him with innocent eyes, trusting him completely. He felt his heart tighten. "You saved them," Milo whispered. "I can't leave them now." Rollin let out a deep breath, almost like approval. Then we walked together. The day passed with careful preparation. Milo packed what little he had, metal scraps for tools, 2 small heat stones, and his torn coat. Rollin gathered dried roots and snow moss from hidden storage tunnels. Before evening they left the old den behind. The cubs rode in a pouch Milo wore on his chest, their heads poking out, staring at the endless snow. Rollin walked closely beside him, always watching for danger. The wind grew stronger as they headed north. Milo wrapped his arms around the pouch, shielding the cubs. Rollin kept his massive body on the windward side, blocking most of the storm. Hours passed. The world became white and endless. But Milo did not fall behind. He kept walking, step after step, while the cubs made soft sounds of comfort. As night fell, Rollin stopped near a tall ice wall. "We rest here," he said. "The storm will fade soon." Milo sat beside him, both of them leaning against the cold wall while the cubs slept between them. The closeness felt natural now, 2 protectors sharing warmth for the sake of the young. Rollin stared at the sky. "You said your people will hunt us," he said quietly. "They will," Milo replied. "But if we reach that valley, maybe they'll lose our trail." "And if they do not?" Milo looked at Rollin with tired but steady eyes. "Then I'll protect the cubs." The same way you protected me. Roland gave a slow nod. You speak like one of my own. Morning returned with clear skies for the first time in many days. The path ahead looked bright and open. The mountains glowed under the sunlight, sharp and blue. For the first time, Milo felt like the world was not trying to crush him. They continued the journey. The further they walked, the warmer the air became. The snow thinned. Milo saw small cracks in the ice where green moss grew. The cubs chirped excitedly at the strange colors. We're close, Roland said. After several more hours, they reached a narrow passage hidden behind a frozen waterfall. Roland pushed through first and Milo followed. The world that opened on the other side took his breath away. The valley was alive. Warm air drifted upward. Water trickled from rocks. Strange glowing plants swayed gently. Soft ground lay under their feet. It was like stepping into a dream. The cubs crawled out of the pouch and stumbled around happily. Milo laughed as one climbed onto his shoe. Roland watched them with deep pride. They will grow strong here. Milo turned to him. And humans won't find this place? Not unless they search the entire world, Roland said. And even then we will be ready. Milo nodded. Something inside him shifted. Fear became hope and loneliness became meaning. Roland walked to him. You have a place here, Milo? If you choose to stay. Milo looked at the valley, the cubs, the alpha who had become his closest ally. He felt for the first time that he belonged somewhere. I'll stay, Milo said softly. I want to help them grow. I want to help you protect this place. Roland bowed his head. Then your path is with us. The cubs ran around their feet, chirping happily. Milo lifted one into his arms, and the tiny creature pressed against his chest with trust and warmth. Together, the human and the alpha looked at their new home. A hidden valley untouched by war, untouched by fear, a place where unlikely bonds could become something powerful. It was not the life Milo had expected. It was better. It was the path to new life.